shall live in thee someday.
Our centering thought is by Reverend Dr. Seth David Clark. This guy. What would justice look like in my community, especially my neighbor's home? May we love our neighbor as ourselves by helping to create a society in which sexual orientation, I skipped a line, I'm sorry. A society in which my neighbor flourishes at least as much as I. Across class, gender, race, sexual orientation, marital status, and more. You're going to be seeing a lot of me today. Welcome to Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Nancy Merrill, and it's my privilege to be your service associate today. We are a liberal religious community bound by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature and science, philosophy, and personal practices. We are a religion of love and inclusion. The mission of Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to Summit, we would like to know more about us, we invite you to go to our website, summituuf.org. Click on the visitors button and fill out our online connection card. Someone will follow up with you. We have several announcements this morning, so I'm going to give you the people who are going to be doing the announcements and then come up in order that I mention you now. Al Mork has Dan Bartholomew and Joanne and Jamie Cleland. Was that it? Are there any other announcements? Okay.
Okay, Al. Down does the homeless.
Do the best I can. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, right. So, well, first of all, the Social Justice and Action Committee group will have a special meeting next Sunday, March 3rd. This is in the library at noon. Our new time is noon now, and and this is to tie up any loose ends before this homeless shelter starts the previous, I guess, next Saturday, so a week from Saturday, on the 9th, but so. Oh.
The 9th through the 9th.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay, right, okay, and also the regular meeting of the Social Justice and Action Committee will be on Sunday, March 10th, and do also in the library, and right, so this will be, so this is a special meeting next Sunday and the regular meeting the following Sunday, both in the library and both at noon, our new time. Okay. What else? We found out that the Interfaith Shelter Network wants to do a workshop here on the Saturday, 16th, when our on-house guests are here, and this workshop pertains different things. I've been involved in various different years, and they send a speaker from the house, and what we need is we're looking for childcare from 9 to noon on that day, and lunch is provided, so one can keep in mind and someone knows someone, so okay, it'll be great. So thank you. Yeah.
And just to follow up a little bit, so yesterday marked 2 weeks until we open our Summit home and our hearts to our shelter guests. So that will be from March 9th to March 23rd as a reminder. We are going to be in the salon as we've been each week to do signups for folks. And again, you can look at the flyers that are available to you in the greeting area and use the QR code to scan and sign yourself up if you like using the app. We have a particular need at this point. Now that we're 2 weeks in, we're at about 75% in terms of the overall need being met for volunteers. We do have a growing and urgent need for folks to fill some evening overnight slots that we have on the calendar where we don't have anybody here at the site. So you can see those on the big board in the salon after the service. And again, to everybody that's volunteered so far, thank you so much for all you've done to support this.
Good morning. I'm Joanne, and I want to tell you briefly about the Caring Committee. Some of you have been recipients of the good work that the Caring Committee does, and maybe some of you don't know what it is at all. So the Summit Caring Committee, along with the minister, provides support services to members and friends of the fellowship during difficult times. That could be transportation, that could be meals, maybe when someone's home from the hospital, things like that. So I just wanted to remind everyone that if you hear someone in our community that's been hospitalized or in crisis in some way, please notify the Caring Committee, either Reverend KC or someone on the committee. And the committee will then take the appropriate steps to see that help is given where needed and wanted. Please don't make requests to the committee on behalf of someone without their permission. It's really important that we respect people's privacy and allow each other to heal, grieve, and deal with crisis in our own way. So it's really important that you have the person's permission. We're going to have a little information table set up in the salon today. If you'd like a flyer or just more information about it. The Caring Committee, I think except for Casey, I think most of us are here today. So it'd be nice to see who the committee consists of and get information if you'd like more information. Next.
Are Sunday services important to you?
Would you like to help in putting them together?
The Sunday Services Committee needs your creative energy, either behind the scenes or as a service planner or out front as a service associate.
Whether you are new to Summit or just looking for more involvement, the Sunday Service Committee could be just what you're looking for.
Come and find out what it's all about on Sunday, March 10th at 11:40 for an informational meeting that'll be held here at Summit.
Get all your questions answered there.
Play an important part in Summit's new beginnings.
Thank you.
Jamie, will that be in that meeting be in the e-news?
I guess it can be.
Okay. Okay. We acknowledge that our fellowship resides on unceded Kumeyaay land, and that for more than 10,000 years this land has been and continues to be home to the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the violent history of colonization in California and honor the legacy of the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay Nation. For our chalice lighting, read with me the responsive reading. Is that going to be displayed, Gabriel? Okay, there we go. So I will read one line and then the congregation reads the next one. May we have the wisdom to believe in peace. Ah, I don't know why I can't follow my own instructions. Let me start again. As we are confronted by chaos, surrounded by voices of disagreement, lured by the seduction of despair,
Seduction of despair.
please stand for the UU hymn and aspiration. And service be its prayer, to dwell together in
Acknowledge and freedom, help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration.
Dan, do you have a mic on? Oh, it's from Zoom. Okay. Somebody from Zoom has your mic.
Morning. A reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verse 31. Then Jesus began to teach his disciples, the human one must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and legal experts, and be killed. And then after 3 days, rise from the dead.
Please stand if you wish to sing Far Too Long, Fear Divided, page 160 in the gray hymnal. Now, Reverend Clark will talk about our joys and concerns.
We have 3 from today, and we received an email yesterday as well. I'll start with that one. A concern or sorrow. Miles Beecham had urgent surgery, I think on Friday now. And we just want to keep him and the entire Beecham family in our thoughts. And then just a little note, cards are welcome, but please refrain from calls at this time. And then from this morning, we have from Marcy Reed, a joy and a sorrow. And it says, my husband, Chris, has been dealing with side effects from radiation he had last November. It caused inflammation in his head. The medications are now bringing him some relief. And from Joanne, I don't know how to say the last name. I'm sorry about that. From Joanne. Okay. Carol Rollins is in the hospital. Concern here. Please help keep Carol and Wendell in your thoughts and prayers during these challenging times for them. They request no phone calls, but cards would be very nice. And then also from Jamie Cleveland, I think. Yeah, a joy, a candle of joy and gratitude to Mark Weedman for putting together a great community gathering on Friday. It was the social event of the year so far. It's pretty good, yeah. So together we hold these joys, these concerns, and these sorrows as a community.
And now it's time for all ages with our Director of Religious Exploration, Mary Carter Vale, on video.
Story for you today. We've been exploring justice and equity and love, and today we're celebrating the work that sometimes standing up for things that are unfair or unjust takes strength and courage. So the story I have for you today is called Courage. The book comes with links. Susan Faraday has shared many stories by this author and illustrator and executive ads. Her books and one of the books. So let me know. So the book starts. When there are challenges in front of me, when I feel unstable, and today
I see one of our children here today. We always sing the children out, so, and first we do this. We are Unitarian, Universalists, people of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. Come sing a song with me. Seth Clark has been my friend and neighbor for years. And for most of that time, I didn't even know he was a reverend. We just talked about the weather and our families, and I really enjoyed watching his adorable little children grow. When he told me about his congregations in National City and the border, I asked if he would consider being a guest speaker at Summit, and he said yes. Then Serafina Galante, coordinator of the Sunday Services Committee, followed up with Seth. We are so fortunate to have Seth speak to us about his unique, firsthand experiences at the border, the human toll the border conflict has taken, and how he is using his gifts to lift the spirits of the innocent people who are caught in the middle. Welcome to Summit, Reverend Dr. Seth David Clark.
Thank you, Nancy. That's in your insert if you'd like to follow along. It's a prayer for victims and perpetrators of justice. It's an unknown author. For all those who have fallen victim to hatred and inhumanity, for those loved ones who are left behind to mourn, for the souls of those whose hearts are cold, Lord, hear our prayer. For the children who are being born into this world of conflict and violence, for women and mothers who suffer needlessly, Lord, hear our prayer. For all those who have been forced into unemployment, who long to return to work, for all those who struggle to support their families, Lord, hear our prayer. For the soldiers who are misguided in thinking that their bullets will bring about peace, for those who feel called to conscientiously object to military orders, Lord, hear our prayer. For the children who cry in their beds at night and wonder, what have I done? For the mothers and fathers who must try to explain the unexplainable, Lord, hear our prayer. For all the children who have died before their time, for the soldiers who allow their uniform to strip them of their humanity, for the healers who are denied the opportunity to use their gifts, Lord, hear our prayer. For the redemption of souls of both victim and perpetrator, for those who commit themselves to the forgiveness of sins, Lord, hear our prayer. Well, it's kind of a heavy topic today, suffering and justice. So maybe we'll ease into it and I can tell you a little bit about myself, if that's okay. Okay. So my name is Seth, he, him, his, and I actually live upstairs from Nancy. That's how we know each other. We moved there in, I think, 2007. Had to move away for a little bit and then came back. But my spouse, Verna, and my two kids, Maximus and Anastasia, it's age 6 and 4. And we live there now, and I'm trying to make that neighborhood our neighborhood as much as possible. But the thing about neighbors is sometimes your neighbors are down the stairs, sometimes your neighbors are a quick freeway drive away, and sometimes your neighbors are a culture away or a couple of 30-foot walls away. And so in my vocation of being a good neighbor, a typical Sunday morning, I'm lucky to be able to take leave to be with you today. But a typical Sunday morning, I'm in National City at First Baptist Church, and it's an American Baptist congregation. And American Baptists and UU folks have been coordinating in pretty cool ways for a long time. But yeah, our congregation is mostly Laotian refugees who've been here for about 40 years, displaced by the Vietnam and Laotian and Cambodian conflicts from the 70s. And yeah, I've been there for about 7 years also. So trying to just do ministry, do work with people who, even though they've been here a long time, don't always feel welcome, don't always feel like they're at home in this place. And then that's Sunday morning, and then Sunday afternoon, I try to be neighborly by going down to the border wall. For nearly as long, I've been going down to this place called Friendship Park. Friendship Park is a binational, trinational, right? Because we are on Kumeyaay land, right? So international place of meeting, inaugurated in 1971 by Pat Nixon, wife of Richard Nixon, former governor, and at that time the president. And this place was a place where there was supposed to be this international cooperation and friendship. And so on Sundays, we have been trying to go out there and offer religious service to those in sacramental solidarity with the families who have been separated there. One of the problems, there are a few, one of the problems is that that place has been closed on the US side since before the COVID pandemic. Border Patrol says they're going to reopen it. Part of what I'm doing now is making sure that they will, a little bit of an organization project. But on Sundays, as much as possible, we try to get out there. The folks in Tijuana are still meeting there regularly, right underneath that lighthouse, if you've been down there. And then on the US side, we are currently meeting at one of the 6 San Diego County open air detention centers where migrants are housed for hours or days before they move on without a whole lot of help. So there's a lot of volunteer action and stuff like that. But on a Sunday afternoon, we'll go down there and offer a service to offer some spiritual hope in that place, which isn't always so hopeful. And with those things that I'm a part of, injustice and suffering are something that I see a lot. I feel it too, but I see it so frequently. So when I open this text, excuse me, from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, and I see Jesus, a great prophet, a great leader. I don't think he was trying to found a religion, but in a sense, a great founder of a religion. What he says rings true. He says, the human one must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, legal experts, and be killed. And then after 3 days, rise from the dead. So the human one is a translation of some Greek words that could also be translated son of man or son of a human. It was a messianic title, and he's talking about himself. So he knows what he's up against. He knows that the oppressors of his day wouldn't let his work for justice stand. When he was going around to the people of Judea and the broader Palestine area, he was bringing with him good news, right? Sometimes we hear this word gospel. Sometimes it gets a little bit misappropriated, but really it's good news. Good news that the kingdom, there's another packed word, the reign, the rule of heaven would come to earth, right? And if you recall the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that was the ministry of proclamation of Jesus. Well, when you're proclaiming something like that, which he says in another gospel passage is good news for whom? For the poor. And when you see that he says, when you do this for the least of me, you do it for me, you know that there's a little bit of a flip in power, more than a little bit. And those in power aren't necessarily going to like that. You see, to the oppressor, equity feels like injustice. When you have something taken away from you, or it at least feels like it, you react. And the religious leaders, and even more so, the empire wouldn't stand for it. And Jesus knew that. He knew that what was coming was going to be incredibly difficult. More than that he would die. And yet there is hope. There is hope. And Jesus is just one in a long line of prophetic voices, of sages, of activists, of people seeking justice across the land who encountered these similar things. If we looked at the Hebrew Bible, there are many, many prophets who gave up freedom, and some even gave up their lives for the sake of justice, for the sake of freedom, for the sake of their own practice with the divine. We think of Daniel, the prophet Daniel. He was in a foreign land, one of many who were stripped out of their homeland, right? Taken by force to a different empire. And he wanted to pray the way that his conscience told him. And he wasn't allowed. Religious liberty is a pretty big deal. And he wasn't allowed. And yet he acted in strength and in courage. Well, he still had to face the consequences, right? There were some folks who in the empire were out to get him, and they did. And there are, if you grew up in maybe a little bit more of a fundamentalist or conservative church like I did, you saw these pictures of Daniel in the lion's den, right? In the art and the flannel graph and all of that. Well, it's more than just a story for kids. I don't know if it's a story for kids, but it's more than that. It's a reflection of the reality that if you practice what you think is right, there might be consequences. And if you enact what you think is just, there's going to be pushback. Well, and we already talked about Jesus a little bit, but think about it. When in his life he went to his hometown, they didn't always want him there. One time they even tried to throw him off a cliff. Not a very good welcome home, right? This is a season of homecoming for like schools and universities and whatnot. Could you imagine a homecoming where, oh, welcome back, alumni. We're going to throw you off a cliff. No thanks. That's not a good welcome home. Not at all. Okay? And then also in this text, he talks about the religious leaders at the time, right? The religious leaders who themselves were propped up by the powers of empire. Well, they themselves, we see throughout these Gospels that they weren't too keen on what Jesus had to say either. They tried to trick him, they tried to degrade him, they tried to pull him down in the eyes of the people so that they could disempower him and his message of hope. And then eventually, the empire did what empires so often do. They used metal and machinery, even if it's as simple as a hammer and a nail, to cause suffering and to cause pain and to cause death. A couple more examples. What about the Buddha? What about the Buddha? He, in his life, there's stories that there were personal attacks on him and his early followers, right? Attack after attack, because again, he was kind of upending how the status quo was. And instead of engaging with them, he saw a different path, a path of silence. Silence in the middle of personal attack. I'm going to be honest, that's hard for me. I want to fight back. Right? Daniel didn't fight back. Jesus didn't fight back. The Buddha didn't fight back. In their own ways, they allowed, or at least suffered well, when these things were placed upon them. And this is hardly an exhaustive list, but what about more recently, in the lifetimes of some of the people here? What about Martin Luther King Jr.? Right? Excuse me. Just last month, we celebrated his birthday. And then this month, we're remembering him and many others who have been part of the cause of rights for BIPOC people, for Black people especially, with Black History Month. Now, we get a day off. It's kind of nice for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But I don't think people always remember how disliked he was. I don't think people always remember the files that the FBI had on him, how he was bugged, how he was kind of harassed, right? The people in power didn't like his message of human dignity, his message of hope, his message of equity. He was upending the apple cart, so to speak. So what happened? He went to jail more than once. People in his movement experienced bombings and beatings. And eventually, you could say Martin Luther King Jr. was martyred for the cause of justice. And he knew it was coming too. He knew that if he continued his work, there was a very good chance that his life would be laid down for that work and for that cause. And it happened. Let's talk a little bit about hope. Because hope is part of this. If there is no hope for something better, all the suffering would make it not worthwhile to engage in the cause of justice. So let's look at these examples again. Daniel, okay, he went to the lion's den, but he got freed. There was like a miracle, basically. The lions didn't eat him. I don't know about that story, but that's pretty cool. The lions didn't eat him. There was a miracle. What about Jesus? In this text, right? What's his hope? His hope is resurrection. There's new life that he's looking forward to. Curious what our resurrection is, what our miracle is. What about the Buddha? In his silence, he had equanimity, he had peace. When others were trying to pull him down and drag him into something derisive, divisive, ugly, he had that peace. And what about Martin Luther King? Well, Dr. King, he laid down his life, that's for sure. But there's no way that we can look at history and say that his work was meaningless. Are things perfect? Hardly. Is there still racism? Of course. And yet, 60 years later, life is better for many kinds of people than it was then. There's still work to be done, but progress is real. Progress has happened, and progress can continue to happen. So for us here and on Zoom, hi Zoom, what does that mean? I think about my own life, right? And how I'm involved in some justice work, right? In different faith communities. I think about how in these communities, I at least try, it's not always perfect, but I try to have a preference for those on the margins. And I think that's something that the UU is so good at. Thinking about and saying out loud that there's a preference for those who have been typically kept out, right? And sometimes that's harder in practice than it is in what we say and what we sing. Right? Sometimes what we say and what we sing and what we say in prayer, these are hopes. What we feel in our meditations, these are hopes and aspirations. And sometimes in our faith communities, in our communities of practice, we have different kinds of, how we say, spirits of cowardice or fundamentalism, right? So maybe not a doctrinal fundamentalism where you got to believe this and believe that, right? But an unwillingness to change how we've done things for a long time, because that's how we've done things for a long time, because that's how we've done things for a long time, and so on and so forth, right? This incalcitrance, this desire to stay the way we've been because it's so comfortable, right? And there's this fear around getting outside of that, but welcoming in new ideas and new kinds of people. I'll tell us a little story. So when I got to First Baptist Church of National City, there were three groups, and two were vying for power, and one was being stepped on. Okay, three, shall we say, language groups, right? There were the Anglos, that's what they called them. There were the Spanish speakers, mostly Mexican, and there were the Laotian people that are still there. Well, the Anglo folks and the Lao folks were had a good relationship, and Spanish-speaking folks didn't have a good relationship with either. And there were these epic battles that would happen again and again. And the people with more power would kind of step on the people with less power, and it would happen over and over and over. Until eventually there was a lot of people who left. And that's suffering. Because what we were trying to do was make it so that the people on the margins had a seat at the table. And the people who didn't like that said goodbye. So much so that at one point, I remember sitting down in a meeting with someone who had been in that church since the 1940s. And he was telling a newish person, who was actually at that point the head of the board. And this person was also a migrant. This long-standing member, because the migrant said, you know what, we can't have this US flag on stage anymore because it's not welcoming to certain kinds of migrants. This long-standing member said, you are not welcome here. And he meant, you're not welcome in this church, and you're not welcome in this country. These are little bits of suffering when you try to see justice happen. More than little bits, they hurt. Well, what about the hope? What about the hope? Well, for me at least, I see hope because when I go to that church on the Sunday morning now, I used to go and my heart rate would go up and I was like, oh, what is going to happen? Who's going to tell me what today? Who's going to be a mean person to this other person today? But that's gone. There's like this spirit of peace there that never used to be there. Right? We're smaller than we were, but we get along now, and there's this community and this love. And at the border, right? At the border, there's a lot going on. Like I said, that we've been outside of this sacred space of Friendship Park for 4 years, over 4 years now. I've experienced personal threats by Border Patrol agents after preaching, right? There's suffering there. But not just for me, right? Like I'll be fine because I can go see my family back in Minnesota. I can go see my wife's family in City Heights. We can cross over the border to see other parts of our family. No big deal. But those folks who use that space, not just for worship, but for family reunion, for practices of saying, I love you, for practices of saying goodbye to dying family members and hello to the newborns of other family members, those folks are the real recipients of this injustice. It happens. Suffering happens. But hope is sure. Hope is sure. Someday, I know, those border walls will not look the same. They weren't there at one point. They won't be there in the same way down the road. It might not be in our lifetimes, but someday there will be something better there. Right? The prayer of the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I often pray that in a certain way. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done at the border, as it is in heaven. Right now, the border doesn't look like heaven. People are falling down from these new 30-foot walls and literally dying. People are being trapped between these two walls. And they just, Border Patrol just, I heard yesterday, closed down the Welcome Center. So now, instead of being transported from there to this Welcome Center where they at least have some shelter, they're being let out at the trolley stations again. Right? They're suffering, but there's hope. And that hope is embodied in us. That hope is in what we know this world could be. That hope is in what we know resurrection can look like in our land and across the globe. These key leaders that we looked at, they didn't give up on hope. They knew something was going to happen, something good. And something invariably good did happen. Was it everything they always hoped and dreamed? No. But something good came out of it. And little by little, there's been progress throughout time. And our hope is that we won't give up, that we will be courageous, that we will be people who care about more than what we say and what we sing, but also about what we do. And how we can include those who've been on the margins, how we can include those who have not had a voice, how we can, without some sort of condescension, oh, how are you? Let me help you. Instead, how are you? Let me be with you. Hope's not bad, but humanity is stronger. Help is good, but hoping with is probably better than hoping for. We have hope for our homes, the homes of the people here in Santee and in neighboring communities of El Cajon, San Carlos, where Nancy and I live, La Mesa, Lakeside. We have hope for these places. We have hope for our neighbors. There are a lot of neighbors who aren't doing so well. They got lots of jobs or don't have enough jobs. They don't have enough time with their kids. They're separated from their families, and either by borders or circumstance. We have hope for them, and we will work towards that hope together. We will work towards that justice together. In our world's in crisis. Climate change is happening. There are wars happening. There's all kinds of political machinations across the world, and yet there is hope. There is hope that something better can happen, and that in some way heaven can be here on earth, in Santee, in San Diego, in Tijuana, and across the world. So yes, suffering happens. It's going to happen on its way to justice. But like Jesus and these other prophets of old, we can remember that hope is sure.
Thank you, Reverend Clark, for that wonderful, uninspiring sermon. We are a fellowship supported entirely by the voluntary generosity of our members and friends, and we greatly appreciate our faithful pledgers who continue to keep up their monthly contributions. It is now easier than ever to contribute to our virtual plate today. The link can be found in the chat box and will take you directly to the donation location. And now we will gratefully accept your generous donations during the musical interlude. Please stand if you wish to sing Wonder Still the World Shall Witness on page 139 of the Gray Hymnal. Oh, I'm sorry. The choir's going to sing this for us. Okay, my order of service was a little off then. Oh, here, oh, yes, I'm sorry. To mercy, peace, mercy, pity, peace, and love. Now, please stand if you wish to sing Wonders Still the World Shall Witness. Page 139 in the Gray Hymnal.
We have a benediction. When suffering comes, and you feel the strength to endure it, when you see injustice, and you find the courage to confront it, when hardship is near, may hope be even nearer. And may you find blessing in this community and in the divine spark in each of us. Be blessed.
Thank you all for being here today. Thanks to Karen, our pianist, and to our small but mighty choir. And a special thanks to Reverend Clark for that powerful sermon. After our closing circle song, we will have a 5-minute break. Then please be seated at the sound of the singing bowl if you wish to stay for our community gathering. We encourage people on Zoom. Yes, it comes right after what I have here. Then please be seated at the sound of the singing bowl if you wish to stay for our community gathering. We encourage people on Zoom to participate in our community gathering. Just raise your hand if you would like to speak. After our community gathering, you are all invited to the salon for refreshments and fellowship. Okay, now we will extinguish the chalice with a prayer by Maureen Killoran. Spirit of deep hope and love, I ache to live the faith I claim to believe. I ask for courage to be fully present in these chaotic days. I ask for wisdom, that my voice may be an agent of resistance and my words add strength for those whose pain has so long been denied. In the name of all that is holy, this I pray. Amen. And now our closing circle song. You want to join the circle?
was a flaw with the hearing that we still don't know what happened. The sound was not going through. Okay. But this idea should have worked, but now we just tested. The microphone is, yeah, but the microphone is not working either. Well, that was a good idea. Yeah, it would have worked. It would have been like one. Yeah. Is there any way we can